Thank you guys so much for clicking on this video. Today we will be covering how to make the void of space. As an added bonus, if you stay till the end, I'll also be covering how I made some of the planets of this scene. I made a planet that kind of looks like Mars, and there's one over in the corner that looks like Earth with an atmosphere over it that I also created. So I'm more than happy to show you guys how to do that. And all of this stuff that I created was just using shading. So let's get right into it and bring our scenes to life using the power of outer space. So the first thing we need to do for our scene is head over to our shading tab. So click on shading, and when in shading, most of the time it'll start off with your object. So what we're going to do is, instead of object, we're going to change this to world. And as you can see, this is a little sneak peek what we're going to be doing, but let's get rid of this for you guys and just start off with something a little bit more basic. Okay guys, so for your scene, I just kind of disconnected everything, but you should see something like this. You should just have some sort of background right here connected to the surface for your world output, and your scene will probably look kind of like this, depending on what you have your colors set to right now. So the first thing that we are going to do is delete the background. And that is because we want to add a noise texture. So do Shift A, search, and just type in noise. And you should see noise texture. And sorry if my computer's a little bit jerky, guys. It's because my scene's really crazy. But if I hide a couple of these things, we might be able to run a little bit better. There we go. Okay, so now that I've hid those, what we're going to do with our noise here is then we're also going to do search and type in color ramp. And then we are just going to, for now, attach the noise texture to the FAC of the color ramp and attach the color to the surface for the world output. And then we're just going to kind of adjust these first to see just noise for our scene. So again, you should be in world select instead of object over here in the left. And all we've done is attach the noise texture color ramp to the world output. So now what we're going to do is head over here to the noise texture details, and we're going to mess with a couple of these things. Now I'm going to say that one of the most important that we're going to mess with is the roughness. So first off, let's think about what colors outer space is. So the colors of outer space is probably not black and white. So I'm going to click this white on my color ramp, and I'm going to change this to more of something I would imagine space to have, like a pretty purple. This might even be too pretty a purple, but we can adjust this color as we desire. So now, like I said, in the noise texture, we're just going to play with some of these settings. So for instance, I'm going to make this scale a little bit bigger. Maybe back to slightly smaller, somewhere around there looks okay. And then what we're going to do is up the detail and increase the roughness. And you get this kind of effect. However, it does look slightly flat to me, just like this. So you'll see this looks still a little bit flat. So what we're going to do is increase that scale pretty much all the way up to 15. Or sorry, the detail all the way up to 15. And now you might be thinking it doesn't quite look like space still, because it doesn't. That's because space actually has more color and light than you'd imagine. So we're going to add a small emission to this scene that we've created so far. So we're going to do Shift A, search, and then type in emission. And then we'll get this little guy. So I'm going to put the emission right here, just smack dab in the middle, and maybe let's increase the color, but not too dramatically, just slightly. And that looks pretty good. The reason this looks so bland and boring is space. If you look at like pictures of different Neptunes and stuff like that, and different galaxies, it's tons of colors, like purples, blues, different pastels of pink hues. So let's add a couple more clouds of color. So this is going to be pretty easy. All we need to do, have noise and color ramp selected, Shift D, move those down. And then we're going to do Shift A, search, and type in mix. And we're just going to select this mix right here. And it's set to float. Let's set that to color. And we're just going to drop it in right there. We don't have anything attached, so that's why it's super light, but all we need to do is attach your one that you just duplicated to B. All we need to do now is we need to slightly offset these so they're in different positions. So you can do that by just touching and tapping that scale of the duplicated noise texture. And then adjust that scale for the color ramp. Adjust that color to slightly different hue, maybe more of a blue. Something like that. And I'm not loving the scale of these, so let's try one. No, let's try 2 for the scale. That looks a little bit better, I think. And then let's try 2.1 for the scale of the blue one. And then you can just move that so it covers different areas. Okay, that's looking pretty good. And you see they're both going through this emission. And again, you can adjust the emission more or less as your scene goes on. And I will say this, the emission also helps to give it depth, because as you can tell when you mess with emissions, it doesn't change the black value because the color's set to black in these. It only changes the value of the colors that aren't black. So when I increase the strength, the black stays black, but the other colors increase, which gives it kind of depth and makes it look more three-dimensional. Okay, so this isn't even quite enough colors. So now what we need to do is duplicate all of this again. But instead of just duplicating these two things to make our job a little easier, we're going to duplicate everything, including this emission over here. And let's, before we duplicate, bring that emission down a couple notches, somewhere around 1.6. And then I'm going to do Shift D and bring all of that down. I'm also going to do Shift A, search, and I'm going to type in mix and select mix shader this time. Because now we've got 2 emission shaders that we're going to plug into one thing. So there's one emission shader, and here's the second. And there we go. Okay, so now let's just rinse and repeat the exact same process by slightly changing some of the colors and hues of this scene. So like this, I kind of want to add some more purples. And I'm going to offset those scales a bit by just kind of lightly adjusting it. I might increase the brightness of that. Somewhere around there looks pretty nice. And then let's see what we can do for this other color ramp. Another color in space. Maybe some more intense blues. And let's adjust the value of that. And that looks pretty cool. It's a little different than my other one, but I like it. We've already got something going pretty cool for space. I'm actually going to increase the emission even more to like, yeah, let's increase those to 2. So there's different depth levels. Increase that one. So now we've got this void look going on with these giant poofy galaxies. However, it doesn't really look like space still. And that is because we don't have stars. So stars are arguably the easiest thing you can possibly make. So all you have to do to make stars is do Shift A, search, and we're going to type in noise yet again. So noise texture. And then we are going to do Shift A, search, color ramp. And yet again, we're going to do Shift A, search emission. And we are also going to duplicate this mix shader down here. Shift D, bring it up. And just then attach this mix shader to the surface of this, of your world output, and attach the mix shader that we were just working on our scene with. Attach that to the lower part of that mix shader. And now let's add some stars to our scene. So to do that, all we need to do is, with your noise texture that we've added, let's put the color into the color ramp, and then the color of that color ramp into the color of the emission, and then the emission into the other shader. And so right now it's confused because it thinks that all we want is white. But what we're going to do is bring these as close as you possibly can. Let's up the scale so we can see a little bit better. So we're trying to make these white specks look essentially like little dots. So just play with your color ramp here, and as you can see, if you bring the blackness up, it'll make your galaxy and other things more visible in the background. And then just bring these closer to get the stars we want. And they don't have to be perfect, because now that I have like roughly what I'm going for, it might also help if we set this to constant instead of linear, because it gives us more definitive stars. So something like that I think will look pretty good. Okay, and then you're done. Just kidding. Okay, so now let's up the scale for this noise texture, and we're gonna up it quite a bit so we have some stars. So somewhere around there, I think, but I want, and if you want more or less stars, just adjust the value of these, the color ramp. For instance, I want a couple less stars, somewhere around there. I think looks pretty good. And then I've got my emission, and we're going to crank this emission clear high up there. And as you can see, it makes the stars start to shine in the background. And now I've got this scene that's in outer space. I've got like my galaxy here, and it's not quite as vibrant as it was before. And an easy adjustment is just adjusting those emissions. So I'm just moving this emission to like 2.3. I'm gonna move this one a little higher too, somewhere around there. And there you go. Super easy space to make. And you can move the camera to any angle and still see outer space, which is super duper nice. So if that's all you wanted to know how to do, that's great. Good luck with your project. Now, if you want the bonus content, I'll show you guys real quick how to make a planet. So let's just go back to our layout up here in the upper left corner. So now that we've created outer space, if you guys have never used this before, actually, I just remember I have an even easier way. I've got my BB Toolkit Pro, and there is a free version of this, and everything I'm about to do, you can have the free version, and this makes processes a little faster when you're doing things like I'm about to do. So I'm just going to add, using the BB Toolkit, a UV sphere. And I'm not going to worry too much about the geometry of it. I'm just going to move it over here using G and Shift, or GY and GX. And let's just move it to a spot where we can get a good look at it. Okay, right there's fine. And I'm going to head over in my top right corner to a little bit of an easier viewport to see it. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we've got this ball here. We're going to right click, shade smooth. And let's also add a subdivision. So now we want to create what looks roughly like some sort of surface for this planet. So let's just head over here to our shading. And we probably don't need to go in that other viewport. We'll just leave it as is. So we've got this planet here. Let me make sure that's selected. Oh, and make sure that you head back into object mode. If you're working on your objects, it's easy to forget that. And I'm just going to click new for a new texture for this. And here's our texture. And what we're going to do now is, and don't bother making this too complicated with like bumps and stuff, because you're not going to see the surface that well. So I'm just going to add a super basic texture. You guessed it. Let's do a noise. And I've got this noise. We're just going to attach that to the color. And then we're also going to do Shift A, type in color ramp, and drop that in the middle. And now what we need to do is we need to decide what we want for our planet. Like I said, I think I personally am going to go for something kind of like almost like a moon looking thing. So I'm going to take the white value and drop that to more of a gray. And let's up the roughness as well as the detail. And then let's down that scale a bit. And maybe let's move these, oh, there we go, to something like around there. Looks pretty good. So you can even just stop right there. That looks like a pretty good moon already, especially if it's like just in the background of your scene. And I just slid this back. Then you got like kind of a moon looking thing in your scene too. But let's add an atmosphere and make it more of a planet. So next thing I'm going to do, I'm roughly done with that. Let's do Shift, with your planet selected, do Shift D. And now we've duplicated, and then we're just going to grow. We're going to scale this with S and scale that out a bit. And now I'm also going to minus the texture from this new ball that we've just duplicated. And you'll see if I hide this, I've still got the original ball underneath. So then I'm going to do Control Z so we can still see that. So let's add a new texture. And we're going to head over here to the right side and make sure it's under Material Properties. And we are going to change at the very bottom the blend mode to alpha clip and the shadow mode to alpha clip. And we're going to now head back over here to your shader material and do Shift A, search, you guessed it, noise. And we are going to attach this to your alpha of your material. And you can already see an immediate effect. And you might be able to do anything, like kind of get away with this without doing a color ramp. A color ramp will give you more control though, however, so I'm still going to add it. So color. And you'll see if I use my slider here, it'll adjust exactly where these areas are kind of affected. And this looks terrible right now. So as you saw me do earlier, we're going to mess with the roughness and the detail, which are going to help a lot. So up that detail all the way. And then we're going to up that roughness all the way. And now this is a little too much atmosphere. So let's back that off a bit by adjusting your color ramp and move them together slowly in different ways. And let's maybe adjust that scale to give it some breathing room. So somewhere right around. And this can be tricky to see what looks good for an atmosphere. I'm going to shrink this down so it's really tiny and put it next to Earth. And then, hopefully if we play our cards right, it'll look kind of like Earth has its little moon. I'm going to change this back to black and gray. Just for fun. And yeah, there you go. That looks kind of like a little moon. Anyway. Alright, that was just an easy way to make planets really fast. I hope you guys did enjoy. The main part was supposed to be the space. So I'm going to unhide everything in my scene. And now it's going to kill my computer. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for clicking on it. And make sure and leave a comment telling me ways that you think I can improve this kind of video. One of my subscribers asked me to add keyboard display setting stuff over here, and I did it. So I listen, I read every comment. I usually try and reply to every comment if I can. So thank you guys so much. I appreciate it, and have a terrific day. I'll talk to you later. Right. It's like we're on a phone call. I'll see you guys in the future at some point later on.